guys. I just woke up and I am gonna have breakfast, just a 7-Eleven breakfast. And I thought I would answer some of your burning questions about my job, which is being a chef. I am a chef. And I know a lot of people have questions about, like, especially now that The Bear is out, right? I love The Bear, by the way. I particularly hate the romantic storyline. Like, if Carmi can't even make sense of his own relationship, how are we supposed to make sense of his relationship with Claire, right? And it really doesn't fit in anywhere. It's kind of like, we get it. Carmi is already a mess at this point. Let's add on another layer. It's like, how much darker can the kettle be? Can the burning kettle be? You know, we know he's messed up. Why are you adding a dysfunctional romantic relationship that doesn't fit anywhere in this context? It's the worst thing about it, really. Like, you don't need the romantic setting. I got the tuna, by the way. The romantic storyline, sorry. Okay, so the question I actually get asked a lot, and this is a lot, is, or rather the comment that I get a lot is that, wow, you work in a kitchen, so you get to eat every day. So you're always full, you know? Yes and no. See, if you work in a kitchen, you don't always get to taste everything, especially if you're in pastry. Like, how many times can you taste a whole cake? 0. How many times can you taste a loaf of bread without, what do you call this? Without destroying it? 0. How many times can you taste a cupcake without destroying it? 0. So there are times when, wow, that's really acidic coffee. I don't remember their coffee being so acidic like this. I actually remember liking 7-Eleven coffee, but this one is pretty acidic. I'm gonna eat it, I'm gonna drink it anyway. So, in the kitchen, if you're in pastry, you barely get to taste anything, to be honest. You'll just taste like extras if there are, or if there are sauces, if there's like a topping that goes on it, a garnish that goes on it, if there are icings and mousses and creams and meringues like that, that's the stuff that you get to taste. But just really like a quick taste, if there are any. You can taste more stuff in the hot kitchen and the cold kitchen. And you should, but it doesn't really mean that you're full. It's very weird, but you tasting stuff doesn't satiate. People think that it satiates your hunger. It doesn't. It doesn't fulfill your hunger whatsoever. You'll still feel hungry during lunch and dinner. It's just the body thing. And that's the thing. Chicken shawarma. That's the thing. We still get hungry. Like, even after tasting, like I said, maybe it's a body thing. After tasting, we still kind of feel the hunger when it's time for that. I can't tell if it's raining or the swing. The air conditioner is just really loud. Can you hear that? So yeah, we still get hungry. And people think we can eat anytime we want. You can't. There are days when chefs don't eat at all. Sometimes we forget. I've never forgotten to eat, but sometimes you forget. Sometimes there's just no time, or sometimes you're just going straight eating. You're just going straight, like cooking and preparing and stuff, that you lose sense of time. That one happens to me a lot. Like, I lose sense of time. I start prepping maybe 10, and then little do I know it's already 2 or 3, and it's just like I did feel hungry, but it's kind of like, oh, I'll eat after this, So that happens a lot. So we're not always full. We don't always get to eat the stuff that we want to eat. So there. Number 2, misconception. is that baking is easy. A lot of people think that baking is easy. Like people think, oh, if you're in the hot kitchen, then you're like you're the thing, you know. And they always think like, oh, basic baking, that's pretty easy. You just have a recipe and just follow it. No, it's actually the opposite. Baking is truly one of the most difficult things to do on planet Earth. Number one, not everyone is disciplined enough to follow a recipe. Number two, you have to follow recipes to a T, especially if you're starting out. Number three, again, you don't get to taste your goods, right? So you just have to trust that what you made is really, really good. And you can't taste it in the process. Like, you can't taste batter, you can't taste dough. You know, I mean, you can, but it's probably gonna give you a stomachache, right? And it's not what the final result is gonna be. So it's futile. So you can't taste it. Unlike in cooking, you can actually kind of get a sense of, oh, this needs more salt, or this needs more pepper, you know. You can't do that in baking because it's simply two different things. Like a baked product is different from will taste very, very differently from the prepped product, right? So that's the thing. Number four, it's really a science. Like serious bakers know the science of what is happening to their baked good once it's put in the oven, once you do this, once you do that, you know. Like, for example, why do you put butter last in crepes, right? Or why do you put steam? Why do you add steam when you're cooking a baguette, right? There's a science behind it, you know. And you kind of have to know that if you want to be a serious pastry chef, if you want to be a serious baker, because you can apply those techniques in other baked goods. You can now kind of like know what to do, troubleshoot if necessary. And here's the thing too. I've been watching Hell's Kitchen, and baking is always a punishment. And I'm like, why? That's not a punishment, that's mandatory. I believe that a chef is incomplete if they don't know how to bake. What if you want to do a pie from scratch? What if you want to do a wrap from scratch? What if you want to make a bun, a filled savory bun, and you don't even know how to make a dinner roll? Come on, like, what a cop-out, right? I believe, this is my opinion, I believe that every chef is incomplete if they don't know how to bake at least one baked product. You know, if you make crepes, that's actually part of pastry. If you need dough for your spaghetti, you're actually stepping into the world of flour already. You know what I mean? So I believe the world would be a better place if all chefs respected and knew how to bake, how to do pastries, at least just one form of baked good, like a loaf of bread or something. Bread is very difficult to do, by the way, but it's my favorite thing to do in baking. I love making bread. I'm not so much a pastry in terms of like cakes and stuff, but I love making bread by hand, and I've had the chance rather to do more of that ever since I started my body journey, because whole wheat bread is very difficult to find for some reason here in the Philippines. And if it is whole wheat bread that I'm looking for, I want it to be 100%. Majority of the whole wheat bread that I find here in the Philippines is a mix, but I use pure whole wheat in my dinner rolls. There's no mix of like white flour or bread flour. It's all just pure whole wheat, and that's very difficult to find here in the Philippines. So yeah. Anyways, baking is really, really difficult. So people think that being a chef is glamorous, right? It is. In some aspects it is, you know. People think it's cool. It is. You get to experiment every day. If you are at that caliber, you get to experiment every day. You get to play in the kitchen, but it takes more than that. And I think nothing says it more than, I don't know if you've ever watched The Menu, or The Menu, depends on how you say it. It's a movie about a restaurant. You know what? I'm gonna force you to watch it. Well, not really force, but like I'm just gonna say that it's a movie. But there's a character there. His name's Tyler, and he pretty much sums up what we are annoyed about in the food industry. Tyler is basically your typical influencer, right? Like he is such a fanboy for all of these techniques. He's such a fanboy. He thinks he's so cool. Like he owns a Paco jet. That's one of the major things. Or he owns a Paco jet at home, and he's like, oh, this is so amazing. You know, like I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to do that, and like he's basically kind of like your typical annoying influencer, because there are different kinds of influencers, right? Like I follow a lot of influencers and I do find them influencing and I enjoy their content, but there are some influencers that you just really can't stand, right? Like they're very know-it-all, they're very annoying that way, and they're stepping over their boundaries, right? Now, I don't want that to mean that cooking is exclusive or like being a chef is exclusive, but you have to respect the craft. People who cook for you, especially if they're Michelin starred or if they've been there for decades, they have years of experience in their belt. Something that an amateur could never achieve without any of the following, right? An education, if you go to culinary school, or if that's not your route, experience, years of experience, you know, because again, you don't have to go to culinary school in order to become a great chef. A lot of Michelin starred chefs did not go to culinary school, but they had years of experience, right? Or you really have the pulse for it ever since you were little, you know? So I'm sorry to say, but just because you are fond of cooking or just because it's your hobby doesn't mean that you're a good one. I was very fortunate that I grew up in a family where my family members are great. Like their palates are amazing and they cook a cuisine. My mother's side comes from Bicol, so they cook a specific cuisine, a regional cuisine, that not everybody knows how to cook, and it's packed with strong flavors. And so I grew up knowing that this is good food. I grew up knowing the difference between good food and bad food. You know, it's easy to please me when it comes to my palate, but I can tell the difference if it's good food or bad food. And it was a fascination for me, you know. It took me some time to finally recognize that that is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Like cooking is what I want to do for the rest of my life, but it has always been there. And I've always tried to learn more about it. I took classes in the past, and then when I finally quit my job, right, and was finally decided that this time is going to be it. This time is going to be me becoming a chef. And when I stepped into culinary school, my assumptions about myself that I had a great palate and that I knew how to cook really well were pretty much solidified. Not to brag or anything, but also to brag. I am a silver medalist. Like, I graduated one of the highest honors in baking and one of the highest honors in cooking. I was the only person who got a silver medal for both cooking and cuisine and pastry in my match. And the next highest to me is the valedictorian, which actually mostly focuses on the hot kitchen, you know. So I got the highest when it comes to both both awards. I got the highest for both. And I would always get comments from my mentors and from my professors that this is really, really good, you know, like this is prepared very beautifully. And I can count the number of times when I did not prepare a dish as stellarly as I wanted to. Is stellarly a word? But yeah, I can count the number of times. It's less than 5. And so, not to brag or anything, but like, I have achieved that because I loved learning about it. There were years of my life when I exclusively watched the Asian Food Channel. There were years in my life where I exclusively read cookbooks. I would experiment, not all the time because I would always be busy, but I would experiment whenever I can in the kitchen. And I would try to learn as much as I can. So if you're not educated, or if you're, if you don't go, if culinary school isn't your thing, if you don't have years of experience, or if you don't have the pulse for it, or all of the above, right? Then you need to get yourself that. I would say this is an industry that you need to be immersed in. It's not something that you can learn simply off of YouTube or any video and not practice it yourself. There has to be some form of information given to you, and you have to practice it on a daily basis if possible. There is no fast track in this industry. There's no fast track towards becoming a great chef. You learn it and you acquire it and you practice it through experience, So again, it is a glamorous job, but it's very different from what people think. It's glamorous when you're already there at the top, but it also entails a lot of research. If you're serious about this, it entails a lot of research. It entails a lot of legwork, and you'll be surprised. How small your bubble is. Many people will tell you that your food is good, Like I said, I graduated silver medalist, right? And I had a lot of certificates. I'll show you guys maybe one time. And my palate is very, very good. And I have a great creative sense as well. I don't like doing things more than once in the kitchen. Which means, I like repeating them as dishes, right? As offerings, but if I have to experiment more than once, that's already too much for me. That already means that I'm doing something wrong, basically, in my opinion. But yeah, so a lot of people will tell you that your food's really, really good, but when it hits other people's palates, those who are more sensitive, those who are more explored, those who are more passionate about food, they might tell you differently, and you'll be very surprised. It's going to be a rude awakening for you. So it's glamorous, but it takes a lot of work to get there. A lot of work, a lot of adjusting, and you have to realize that it's not an attack on you or on your ability. Well, maybe on your ability if you're a lazy chef, right? But it's actually their own opinion. They're just telling you their own opinion. And being a chef, you have to take that into consideration. It's not like you can just brush that aside, because maybe there's some truth to it. Like when a person says, oh, maybe your dish needs something to cut it with, maybe it's too fatty, you have to listen to that stuff. Because it might just improve the quality of your dish. To you, maybe it's fine. To your mother, maybe it's fine. To your sister, maybe it's fine. To your friends, maybe it's fine. But then you present it to someone who's been traveling the world eating, and immediately they know what's missing. You gotta listen to that. And sometimes it's hard criticism. Sometimes it's very difficult to hear that, because especially if you have an ego, which all chefs have, by the way. Especially if you have an ego, you'd be like, what? It already tastes good. A lot of people tell me that already. You gotta listen to it. And you have to find it in you to dig really deep and be willing to start over again. There have been dishes where I've been working on them for weeks and they've been given the no signal. Weeks and no signal. And it's not an attack on who I am, but it's just simply that they didn't want it on the menu because it doesn't fit the theme of the night, or it doesn't fit the theme of the restaurant, So that happens. It happens more often than you think, even to people who have great palates, who cook really amazingly, It's glamorous, but it's not without the work. You have to put in the work. You don't become a chef overnight. In fact, a chef is someone who is already at that caliber, to be honest. If not, then you can't call yourself, personally, that's my personal opinion, you can't call yourself a chef just yet. Another thing that people say that, oh, I'm not good at math, so I'm going to take culinary. Oh my God. Math will be the bane of your existence. There's such a thing as culinary math, converting measurements and stuff like that. There's also another thing that people don't know about is that chefs of the highest caliber also do costing. And that's much more complicated than any math that I've ever taken in my entire life. I'm not that great in math. It's not my thing, basically, but I had to adjust. So if you want to take a culinary, just know that there's a lot of math involved. There's one scene from The Bear season 3 where Carmi was scrubbing the floor, right? He was on his hands and knees scrubbing the floor. And one thing that you have to learn, especially if you're not a clean person, you're gonna have to learn how to be a clean person. You have to be considerate of your hygiene, which unfortunately Carmi doesn't. We see there in The Bear, he doesn't put too much emphasis on his hygiene because he's so tired. But if you want to be a chef, please take a bath every day. Like I see it on Hell's Kitchen too. After service, they go to their room and they lie down on their beds. Oh my God, that's like one of the grossest things I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, especially if you're a chef here in a tropical country where everything is just sweat. I mean, everything sticks to you. Even if it's cold, the smell will stick to you. The food bits will stick to you, and you're taking that to your bed. And they grow, Just imagine food that's rotting in your refrigerator. That food particle does stick to your clothes, to your hair, and you're taking it to bed. And how often do you wash your sheets? So don't be surprised if you find that if you do that on a daily basis, it's gonna stink like hell, But yeah, so back to the scrubbing. You're gonna have to learn how to be a clean person if you want to be a chef. All chefs on their way up the ladder have experienced cleaning very diligently, very scrupulously on all their surfaces, especially if you have a French chef. They prioritize cleaning. And as it should, because you're working with food, it goes inside a person's body. So you have to be of utmost, there needs to be a sense of importance when it comes to cleaning, because that could very well spell the difference between a great experience and like a really terrible trip to the ER because of like maybe salmonella or E. coli. One of the things, it's not a question, but one of the things I love is that in the kitchen there are so many personalities. So it is as The Bear shows it to be, like in the kitchen, right, in their back of the house. There are so many different personalities, right? Like you have a mix of strong personalities, you have a mix of soft personalities, like so there are some people in the middle. The kitchen is really a place for that. If you've read any one of Anthony Bourdain's books, but really, if you've read Kitchen Confidential, that's a great example of what a kitchen is like. That's actually a prime example of what a kitchen is like back of house. There are a lot of personalities and people with different backgrounds, and just like it's very interesting and it's really fun. But the one thing you guys have is discipline. You can easily spot those who are dedicated to the craft because they're not disciplined. So no matter how rebellious you are, no matter how tame you are, all of you meet, you congregate in the kitchen, and you have an understanding that you are family because you're bound together by this discipline. You're bound together by the love of this craft. You're bound together because you push yourself forward and knowing that I'm a great cook, I'm a great chef. You know, you're all bound together by that. And instantly you become family. You understand each other because of that. So no matter how different you are, even if you don't speak the same language, you can dance in the kitchen and know that you respect each other because all of you have that discipline, all of you have that passion, all of you have that love for that craft. So that's really, really cool. So yeah, I'm gonna finish my meal and that's it for this part of it. Now on to the next part.